Of course it does. Good, that's charging. Let's see. Oh, shit. Sorry about that. Fix that. Yeah, I had to refix the canvas because it was too loose. Alright, let's see what we can do about this. Let's see. Something to listen to. Oh, should get on that. I can do Thursday. Ooh, chest pain. It's not good. Let's just do this. I don't have many brain cells today, so.
Why is Gravity Falls still so popular? Why do we all still care about a show that ran for only 2 seasons over a decade ago? Was it the writing, the storytelling, the characters, all of the above? Or is it what Gravity Falls teaches us about ourselves and the dangerous world around us? Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's searching for cryptids in the woods. Look, is that the subscribe button? Quick, click it before it gets away! Nice. So, at this point, we here at Film Theory are no stranger to Gravity Falls and its surrounding media. If you don't know, Gravity Falls is a series created by Alex Hirsch about the twins Dipper and Mabel Pines, spending the summer with their grunkle Stan in the sleepy town of Gravity Falls, Oregon. But, of course, there's magic and monsters and trans-dimensional beings in these woods, leading the family on adventure after adventure. We've done a lot of theories about the series, and really dug deep into it last year in The Book of Bill, a novel written in-universe by the series' bad Bill Cipher, was released. What followed was a massive ARG that the entire Gravity Falls community came together to try and solve. But, of course, there's more happening with the book that may give us more clues and puzzles to solve. Yeah, believe it or not, but there's another edition of The Book of Bill about to hit store shelves as I write this. The limited collector's edition. You can tell this one's different because it's green. Green. No, but for real, this one is glow in the dark. It's gonna come with a bunch of posters and stickers and stuff like that, and is described as having, quote, more horrible secrets. So, of course, you know that myself and all of our writers
I haven't gone anywhere.
ordered a copy.
How do I have everyone I need but the tiny one?
I legitimately have to wonder if that was intentional. Anyway, you best believe that we're going to be digging into this as soon as it arrives to see if there's any new secrets or threads to pull in our theorizing. I'll actually probably be doing like a bit of a first impressions thing over on my Instagram if you want to see that. At Forest First, by the way. But if you want to get in the trenches with a ton of other people and try to solve this stuff first, please go check out the Gravity Falls subreddit and Discord communities and join in on that fun. There are awesome people over there. Anyway, as I've been waiting for my copy to get here, I've been thinking a lot about Gravity Falls, and, you know, it's kind of amazing that a series that ran for 2 seasons over a decade ago still has this much of a stranglehold on the wider theorizing community. And naturally, that got me wondering why. What has Gravity Falls done that's kept it at the top of mind for so many people? Why is this show still popular? Why do people still care about Gravity Falls? So today, while I patiently wait for my copy of the limited collector's edition and a blacklight to arrive, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I want to start a discussion and really break down why Gravity Falls has had the incredible staying power it had over the years. I mean, there are lots of reasons why it stuck with us, but honestly, it might be even more popular the further and further we get away from it, because it's one of the only shows out there actually equipping its audience for the future. So grab your journals, loyal theorists, as we jump through the interdimensional portal to find out why do you still care about Gravity Falls, Part 1. How it's made. Believe it or not, to understand why Gravity Falls hit so hard, we have to start our story all the way back in 2007, almost 20 years ago. Oh god. This is when Alex Hirsch graduated from the prestigious CalArts College and got his first job as a writer and storyboard artist on the Cartoon Network show The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. If you don't know, this was a surreal cartoon about a young sailor, a talking whale, and a pirate. We should really do a theory about this one someday, shouldn't we? Anyway, though Flapjack itself was short-lived, the influence this show had was massive. Like, seriously, along with Gravity Falls, the creators of Adventure Time, Regular Show, and Over the Garden Wall all worked on Flapjack, and this crew was given a surprising amount of freedom by Cartoon Network. In fact, Cartoon Network was described as a Wild West during this period, allowing the shows being made here to get pretty crazy and work as fun factories.
Hopefully I can get most of this done tonight.
Audiences. And you know what? That worked, like, super well. While Disney was dominating the youth market during this period, especially with younger girls, Cartoon Network leaned hard into programming for boys, preteens, and young adults. Not all of it worked, looking at you live-action shows on Cartoon Network, but this let cartoonists spread their wings and tell edgier stories with more emotional depth. Case in point, the aforementioned Adventure Time, which was undoubtedly the biggest cartoon on the air because it combined its jokes with long-running storylines, horror imagery, emotional gut punches, and inappropriate innuendo. Disney saw this, and they wanted a piece of the pie. It's a big reason why they also bought Marvel and Star Wars, but they wanted to try their hand at some original stories too. As the story goes, Disney actually reached out to creators like Hirsch for pitches, wanting to add them to their roster of talent. At the time, Hirsch wasn't super interested in creating children's content, so he gave them a very mature idea, adding details that excited him, but would be pushing the mouse's boundaries, fully expecting them to turn him down. But they didn't. Like, no matter how weird this pitch got, Disney was still on board. Oh, the Grand Uncle character is going to be morally bankrupt? There's weird mysteries that are going to take years to solve? The main villain is a two-dimensional pyramid man? Doesn't matter. We love it. And that was the best decision Disney could have possibly made. See, this show wasn't Alex Hirsch's attempt at making a Disney cartoon. It was Disney's pass at making an Alex Hirsch show. And that's the first reason why it's still so popular. At its core, it was something its creator wanted to make. And believe me, that style of show is popular worldwide. Like, we're getting to the point where you could travel the world and find Gravity Falls fans no matter where you end up. Though doing all of that travel would quickly bankrupt you, plus all the logistics of making it happen. Jeez, it's giving me a headache just thinking about it. But thankfully, Kluke, the partner for today's theory, can make that all go away. So, true story, but Matt and Steph just took a trip to Japan over the summer and had nothing but cool stories about it when they got back. And actually, Food Theory's very own Santi went on his honeymoon to Japan like a week after I met him. So I've been hearing about all these cool things and awesome stuff you can do there. I mean, I've always wanted to travel to Japan. Just look at me. I watched anime in high school and played JRPGs. I'm the exact type of person who would want to go. So I want to finally start planning this trip. But actually figuring out the travel is incredibly stressful. I'm not Bill Cipher. I can't just snap my fingers and teleport dimension. But thankfully, that's where Kluke comes in clutch. I just downloaded their app and all of a sudden, everything got way easier. Basically, all expenses were under one roof here. Like, do I need to book a hotel? I'm covered. Need an eSIM card so your phone works? Done. Want to know all the cool stuff you can experience? Well, it's all right here, and you can even book it all in the app itself. I'm actually particularly excited about the idea of going to Tokyo Disneyland and Universal Studios Japan. I don't think there's anything Gravity Falls in the parks, but Super Nintendo World is right up my alley, man. Oh, and please, if you have any other recommendations for stuff I should check out in Japan, leave them in the comments, man. I will be looking at that. But Kluke offers so much more beyond just Japan, too. They have thousands of destinations across the world, including in Korea, Europe, and the United States. They also have support for over a dozen languages and 40 currencies, so yours is likely covered. Plus, on top of their great prices, they often have regular discounts, promotions, and flash sales. And you can get an even better deal by signing up for Kluke today using my link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. It'll It'll take you to the Klook app and you can start exploring your next travel destination with just a few minutes. Oh, and make sure you use the code FILMTHEORY for 10% off your first purchase. It's an even better deal, man. So do yourself a favor and make travel easier for yourself using Klook. I know that I certainly will. Thanks again to Klook for sponsoring this theory, but now let's travel back to the sleepy town of Gravity Falls. Part 2. Good lordy, right! Because Gravity Falls was very much a Hirsch first production, a lot of elements from the show are based on his own personal experiences. For example, Dipper, Mabel, and Grunkle Stan are all based on his family. Dipper is kind of a self-insert, Mabel is a loving homage to his twin sister, and Stan is his grandfather. The town of Gravity Falls itself was born from Hirsch's time growing up in the Pacific Northwest, my favorite part of the country, by the way, with even specific locations like the tourist trap and mystery spot being recreated as the Mystery Shack. But this isn't just an author making fan fiction about his own life. No, inserting these themes is key to why Gravity Falls connects to its viewers. See, Dipper and Mabel and their story all feel so special because they take us all back to an important time in our lives, when we were growing up under the same roof as our siblings and family. Now, some of us are lucky enough to live near families and to still be in contact, but others, not so. We've either moved away, invested in hobbies, gotten jobs, or started families of our own. Our preteen and teenage years were the last times we spent every day with our OG family, and for a lot of us, we've gone from hating sharing a room with our little brother who snores to
shake and win millions of prizes with the AliExpress $1 challenge.
snores to only seeing them on holidays. Well, watching Gravity Falls feels like it's picking up right where these childhood memories left off, with your crazy siblings and kooky grandpa going on whimsical adventures, because that's exactly what this show was for her. Like, this show was designed to appeal to, like, the most people possible. Hirsch wanted it to be relatable to everyone and connect to people emotionally. And that's why the show takes place during the last summer of Dipper and Mabel's childhood, as they're transitioning into teenagers, starting to gain more independence while still living relatively simple lives. And on top of that, it also captures a lot of other nostalgic feelings, like going to summer camp, hanging out with your crush, and learning about yourself. Though Gravity Falls does do this in a really smart way, externalizing those feelings into actual physical things in reality. But even on a meta level, Gravity Falls lives in this weird middle ground. As I'm sure all of the Gravity Falls superfans know, the show only had 2 seasons. And while it sucks that it ended so early, that might have been a giant blessing in disguise. Like, it didn't live long enough to become corporate, for lack of a better word. See, the mouse is pretty selective about which properties it decides to really throw its weight behind. And if you don't live up to expectations, believe me, they are brutal and will cut you loose. Like, seriously, check out this theory we did last year about how they almost killed the X-Men in the comic books because they couldn't make movies about them. It's ridiculous. And though they did seek out Hirsch to make Gravity Falls, once it was on the air, they had gotten what they wanted. Especially with Marvel and Star Wars now on their roster, they had their boy and young adult-centric shows. And so, they let a lot of great series end a lot earlier than they could have. Stuff like The Owl House, Amphibia, Star vs. the Forces of Evil. You get the idea. Like to Mickey, if something isn't going to appear in their parks, which is their real moneymaker, why even bother investing beyond a couple of seasons? Remember how I said that this was more of a Disney version of an Alex Hirsch show? Well, this is why. If Gravity Falls had kept running, if we were on like season 10 of this show, you just know it would have turned into something completely unrecognizable. But instead, we got a show that concluded on its own terms, giving its characters and plot threads satisfying endings, all while it didn't talk down to its viewers. And actually, the fact that it treated like all of its viewers the same probably contributed to the next big reason it's still with us. Part 3, putting together the puzzle pieces. Now, when you hear good writing, you probably think of stuff like satisfying plots, great character development, funny jokes, interesting ideas executed well, and you'd be right. All of those things are great writing, and Gravity Falls has all of it in droves. But something else Gravity Falls really took advantage of was pre-existing folklore, fables, and fairy tales as the backdrop of its world. Like in Gravity Falls, magic is real, right? Not only that, but so are aliens, and ghosts, and garden gnomes, and cryptids, and all of the sort of stuff you'd normally see on some low-effort History Channel marathon. Well, I don't know about you, but I've never met anyone in my life who didn't wish at least one of those things actually existed in the real world. And, like, that would be true going back centuries and centuries. Now, this is great for a number of reasons. Like, first of all, most of these stories were originally told as ways to teach children life lessons in digestible ways, introducing them to the real world through the lens of fantasy. Like, think of Hansel and Gretel. The idea there is not to trust random strangers, go into their house and eat their food because they might not have the best intentions in mind for you. That's awesome, and a great way to sort of recycle these ideas and stories into a new show like Gravity Falls, keeping all of the baggage that came with them before while also playing off of them. But Gravity Falls didn't just use these sorts of folklore and fairy tales and mysteries as its wallpaper. It was a core component of the show that was taken beyond the television screen. Yeah, instead of just being a show you can watch, Gravity Falls was designed from the ground up to have an element of audience participation with elements of an ARG layered in from its very first episode. And though it wasn't the first show that incorporated an ARG like this, it was definitely the most popular and aimed at the widest audience. So for those of us who missed the show's original run, Gravity Falls always had little hidden messages or small details that kept viewers engaged and rewarded those who were really paying attention. For example, the time traveler Blendin Blandin cameos in the background of multiple episodes before his first real appearance in episode 9, where he ends up time hopping into those previous scenes. And this, my friends, is ultimately what converted viewers of Gravity Falls into super fans of Gravity Falls. While yes, the story behind the show and its clever writing and the way it used folklore would get people in the door, but Gravity Falls took things further by encouraging its viewers to do more than just watch passively. It dared them to re-watch every episode, scan every frame, looking for mysteries to solve, and it even helped them develop new skills to do it. Early on, fans were drawn to the letters of gibberish that appeared during the end credits of every episode, though at first it didn't really seem like there was anything useful to do with them. But then, eagle-eared fans caught on to a clue: whispers at the end of the opening credits. Well, when you play this backwards, you're met with an interesting phrase. 3 letters back. Now, these days, anyone who's participated in a FNAF ARG can tell you what 3 letters back means. It's a clue that explains how to break a Caesar cipher, the encryption method where each letter of the alphabet is shifted in the same direction. So, this mess of letters from the first episode becomes Welcome to Gravity Falls. And once ballers caught on to this, they began to find clues everywhere. Soon, there were codes hinting at different ciphers appearing in upcoming episodes, and audio messages found within other episodes still. For many, this was their first encounter with this sort of interactive media and puzzle solving. And for others, it was a chance to put their problem-solving skills to the test every episode. And boy howdy, did this work. Gravity Falls got its hooks into people, looking for clues to mysteries that may or may not have even been there, trying to figure out the identity and the fate of the writer of Journal
I don't know
3,
if anybody's
uncovering
talking
the truth
because
behind
I'm looking at
Stan's
something else.
secret passageway. Not
I'm
like
already
that,
painting
get
a
your mind
skeleton.
out
I am
and keep in
painting
mind
with a
that this is
palette
back
knife,
when the internet
mostly.
as we know it was in its
In
infancy.
acrylic paint.
Plenty of shows like Twin Peaks and Lost had
I don't exactly know what I'm doing, so we're just winging it tonight.
Gravity Falls was one of the first
I got my
shows
reference photo up, so if I don't reply to any comments, it's because I'm probably looking at it.
Smartphone. You could literally be live chatting on the forums or live blogging on Tumblr from your couch on your phone while the show was still on. A thing a lot of us didn't get a chance to do when our access to the internet was trapped in the family computer in the living room. But more importantly, what it did was to get people to watch the show and then watch it again and again and again and again, all in search of these clues. People loved this, and I cannot begin to tell you how effective it was. And again, it became more effective when Alex and his team brought it into the real world with something even more physical, with in-person ARG elements. Between seasons, the show's crew went on the Mystery Tour 2013, renting a van to travel to weird tourist traps along the West Coast. And
That's
leaving
not the
small
same
trunks
profile
and
picture I was
behind
using.
them.
Damn
And if
it.
fans could find them, they'd get a silly prize. Just a month later, when the crew was noticing that fans were catching on to Stan having a twin that wrote Journal 3, they decided to have more fun, faking a leak on 4chan where they posted an image of McGucket writing the journal. While that might sound deceiving, fans took a lot of pride in getting the creators of the show to go to new lengths in order to keep the show's big twist alive. And even then, to the crew's chagrin, several fans called out the leak as fake. This dedication to creating a living experience for fans to solve outside of the show would even live on after it was finished, with the great great cipher hunt that we've covered a few times here on the channel, all of which led up to the Book of Bill's release last year and the ARG that followed. Now, we did several theories covering this ARG and the community's hard work decoding all of its puzzles, but needless to say, I think its success caught everyone at Disney off guard, since the book became a New York Times bestseller, moved more than 850,000 copies, and broke the website for the ARG. And while solving all of these puzzles is super cool, do you want to know what's even cooler? The fact that all of these hidden codes and messages in Gravity Falls actually taught kids how to think for themselves. It encouraged them to use their imaginations. This show was basically like a tutorial on how to solve different types of ciphers, to think outside of the box when confronted with puzzles, and to look at people who might seem two-dimensional at first and to see them as the three-dimensional humans they actually are. And as the Gravity Falls fan base got older, our itch to solve these puzzles remained. It shifted to channels like these, or to similar shows like Alex Hirsch's Inside Job over at Netflix, sure, but then we were reactivated by the release of Journal 3, the Blacklight Edition, the Treasure Hunt, the ARGs, the Book of Bill, and we're still hungry for it because the children don't yearn for the minds, we yearn for the mind. And that's a great thing, because in this day and age,
Secret keeps me fresh for those long flights, and it's totally Little Seed approved.
A tasty and nutritious snack. Let's call that a win-win. Yogo Nano, it's your snack champ.
this day and age, we need those skills. Part 4, it's what we need right now. I cannot stress this enough, but we're at a monumental transitional phase in history. Gone are the days where we need to solve mysteries ourselves. Now, we can just look up an Easter egg video on YouTube, check the wiki for details we missed, or ask ChatGPT if you're especially lazy. Reddit and TikTok sleuths are able to solve puzzles faster as a collective than folks used to be able to as individuals. I mean, just look at the incredible work of the Gravity Falls communities on Discord and Reddit when the Book of Bill came out, solving those super tough puzzles in like no time flat. Life used to hold great mysteries, cryptids, and places on the map that weren't filled in. Here there be dragons or the lake, the podcast monster, Chris Angel Mind Freak. It used to be fun not knowing whether or not something actually existed and trying to find ways to prove it, but now nothing's a mystery anymore. A magician's tricks can be broken down in TikTok videos. The likes of the chupacabra have been explained by science and history. UFO videos are easy to debunk with technology, and even then, well, personal story, but I used to get really excited by this sort of stuff. But now, you can show me video proof that an alien spacecraft landed in your backyard that would have been undeniable 20 years ago, and now I just see the after effects and blender tricks you use to make it. The truth behind all of those myths has been explained. With people more connected than ever before, with a majority of the world's information collected and easily accessible, with cameras everywhere and recording everything all the time, and the knowledge of experts put out there for anyone to learn from, the magic, the myth, the mysteries, they're gone. The X-Files used to say that the truth was out there, and now the truth is literally just a Google search away. But that's changing, and I have to wonder if we're going back into a new age of whimsy, a new age of the unknown. Now with AI more widespread than ever before, maybe we're going back and having sort of a reverse Bigfoot situation. Instead of all of this technology making it impossible for anything magical to exist and not be documented, we're circling back to the other extreme, where even the most mundane thing can be fake. It can be in Photoshop or AI generated and leave us questioning everything again. And that right there, my friends, is the reason that Gravity Falls will continue to be beloved. Because it was already preparing people for this without them even realizing it. Preparing people to explore and question and solve mysteries, all while being emotionally resonant with what we feel as an adult. And right now, that's more important than ever, especially with the world's attention span and media literacy lessening day by day. Just saying you're not going to beat Bill Cipher by doom scrolling. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. Today, loyal theorists, I need your help to solve the hardest puzzle in the Book of Bill.
Horse girls are taking over. Uma Musume is the internet's latest obsession. Literally everyone I know is either playing the game, watching the anime, or asking, WTF is this? Listen, if you know, you know. And if you don't, get ready, because you are about to learn everything you need to know about the fashion of these anime horse girls. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Style Theory, your fashion ride or die since 2023. And speaking of riding, horse riding, to be clear. Today we are talking about the anime horse girl racing game and its tie-in anime series that has taken the internet by storm. I'm talking, of course, of Uma Musume Pretty Derby. Listen, you have no idea how many people have asked me to cover this game ever since we did the K-pop Demon Hunters episode. And speaking of that episode, I'm going to remind you that I will be doing my best with all the names and terms in this episode to pronounce them correctly based on the guides I can find online. Yes, you have my full permission to laugh if I say something wrong. Just be kind and know I am trying my hardest. Cool? Cool. Now, here's the TLDR version of this crazy horse girl game. This is a gacha or collecting game where you are collecting anime horse girls and training them to win horse races. Yes, these girls are literal horses. I mean, that's why it's called Uma Musume. It literally translates to horse girl. But that is not the best part. The part that made me think, yes, we have to cover this on this channel were their outfits. These looks are full of history, Easter eggs, and most importantly, lore. By the end of this episode, you will know everything that you need to know about the fashion of Uma Musume Pretty Derby.
Is that your engagement ring? He was always up to something. Such a larrikin. I said yes before he could even speak.
And life's got you double booked? There's McDelivery. Order on the McD's app to earn points and get a $0 delivery fee. An 11% service fee and $2 small order fee still apply.
Pretty Derby. It only makes sense for us to start with what is definitely the main draw of the game. The horses. The horse girls of Uma Musume are all based on real-life horses. As such, they all sport ears and tails, so you never forget that, yes, these are actually horses. In fact, the creators had to design special phones for the characters to use to make up for that comically large distance between their horse ears and their human mouth. It's just objectively hilarious. These girls. Now, this style of
I don't
anthropomorphic
feel good. Oh, just gonna sharp. Just me. Ooh, that was uncomfortable.
using different animals isn't really anything new, especially in anime, manga, and, you know, fun little games. Actually, I just added this gold chip plush to my collection because I love the character design just that much. I mean, look at her. Look at her. She is so cute. So cute. I just wish there was a way for them to come with me wherever I go because they give me so much joy. Oh, wait. They can. Whether you're making your card 100% more adorable or packing a plush for good luck, you can do it all easier with Exter. And I am so happy to tell you that we are partnering with Exter again for this episode. No joke, I have been using this Exter wallet every day since I got it. This is the one I got the last time that we partnered with Exter, and it's become my everyday card holder. And Exter was nice enough to send me a brand new one in a lovely seafoam green. Oh my gosh, if you put these together, they look like Samson Biggs hat. Look, it's so cute. I love that it makes your cards easy to access with just the push of a button, and that the strap helps me keep track of all of my receipts when I'm traveling for work. And speaking of traveling, Esper has a brand new item I am obsessed with. It's this little travel vacuum. Ah! It's a travel vacuum. Not like the vroom vroom vacuum cleaner. I mean one that can help you vacuum seal a travel bag to give you more space in your luggage. Listen, I am a chronic overpacker, and this has saved my life. Instead of panicking over what I can't fit, I can use the travel vacuum and bags to fit everything I need. And a few things I just want to take along. You know, just in case. I'm actually packing right now for a trip to Florida to visit my family. And so this was like destiny, baby. And you are destined to save. Because Extra is having their huge fall sale now until November 5th with deals up to 35% off. And you know, November 5th just so happens to be my birthday, but like, no big deal, no big deal. But instead of getting me a present, get yourself one by using code STYLE to get an extra 10% off those already crazy sale prices. I know! Happy birthday us! All you have to do is scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to start shopping the sale right now. And don't forget to use code STYLE for an extra 10% off. Thanks again to Extra for sponsoring this episode. Now, back to the races. In the game and anime, all of the horse girls are enrolled at the prestigious horse training school, known as Tracin Academy. And in true anime fashion, whenever they're on campus, they are wearing a school uniform. But while these uniforms may seem a little boring and cliche, especially if you are a frequent anime viewer, I'm here to tell you that that is totally not the case. The history of how these uniforms became so tied to Japanese culture is actually fascinating. The stereotypical Japanese schoolgirl uniform typically consists of a pleated skirt, a bow or scarf, and a blouse with a collar reminiscent of those seen in old-school sailor uniforms. And no, it did not get that name for its use in Sailor Moon, though that is arguably what gave it its worldwide fame. Turns out that these sailor-like uniforms didn't actually appear in Japanese culture until around the 1920s. Prior to that, girls in Japan typically wore a kimono to school, but that all changed once the Fire Nation attacked. Just kidding. It changed with the arrival of a woman named Elizabeth Lee. Lee was the principal of the Fukuoka Academy for Women, and she thought that kimonos were not exactly a convenient or comfortable thing to have to wear to school every single day. Your mileage may vary on that opinion. But because of that, Lee started to look for alternatives for her students to wear. Back in her school days, Lee spent time as a foreign exchange student in the UK, where she had to wear the British school uniform. It was this experience that inspired Lee to bring these uniforms to her students in Japan. And her designs drew heavy inspiration from the British Royal Navy uniform of the time. And the rest, as they say, was horsery. I mean history. The sailor-style school uniform exploded in popularity across Japan, where it became known as the Sailor Fuku style, named for the Fukuoka Academy where Lee worked. And over time, it became the default school uniform, at least in popular Japanese media. Today, the style is almost exclusively worn by junior high students. The majority of Japanese high school students have transitioned away from the Sailor Fuku style to a more Western Catholic-esque school style uniform, with a plaid skirt, sweater, and blazer. But the horse girls of Uma Musume aren't just attending school, they are also living out their idol fantasy. Yeah, as if this game didn't have enough going for it already, the horse girls of Uma Musume aren't just racing, they are also hopping on that pop idol train. Honestly, it shouldn't be that surprising. Idol groups are huge in Japan and beyond. The size of some of these idol groups is actually insane. I mean, just look at AKB48. They currently have 43 active members. 43! I don't even know if I know 43 people. That is not a band. That is a battalion. But the group in Uma Musume is even bigger. By my count, there are nearly 60 horse girls to collect and train in Uma Musume. Though with updates, that number is definitely going to change. But it also means that that stage is going to get pretty crowded pretty fast. And if there's one other thing that idol groups are infamous for, it's their colorful, flashy, and very elaborate costumes. In Uma Musume, all of the girls have a main...
I really just hate the thought of it, so we'll skip that for now. Sure.
Layer on the Armstrong cheese, stack up the flavor. Bring the flavor Canadians crave.
What do we all crave at Thanksgiving? It's the sandwich. Tim's new Thanksgiving stack. Seasoned Canadian turkey, home-style stuffing, and cranberry sauce. Exclusively for Tim's Rewards members. Get an $8.99 dinner deal.
How deadly is Donkey Kong's punch? It's one of his most iconic moves in Smash Brothers, and now he's back in Donkey Kong Bonanza, and he is stronger than ever, destroying anything that gets in his path. But how strong is it really? Today, we're going to find out. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that smashes the environment with science like you smash that subscribe button. Although I'm not sure my world-smashing brain would put up much of a fight against the world-smashing brawn that is Donkey Kong.
Hi, sorry about that. I didn't see anybody in the chat because I wasn't looking at the chat. I was trying to use my eyeballs.
But ever since his
How's
appearance in
everyone tonight?
1999 Super Smash Bros., ZK's Charge Punch has remained a powerful force to be reckoned with. And now, with his triumphant return in Donkey Kong Bonanza, we finally
that's not a chin, that's the upper jaw.
destroying the environment
it
by
has no lower jaw.
eliminating
That's why it's
parts.
called
The
silence.
destructive force of DK's fist
It's supposed to be
seems
a
overwhelming.
kind of a
Question
horror
is it? You see, Nintendo has a
themed
habit of, let's say,
of your dreams. So I went with paranoia,
But you know what?
anxiety,
Fun physics,
and
especially the physics of an 800-pound
silence.
gorilla with
Silence.
workplace relationships. So I figured it was time for me to sit down.
At least that's a
and plan
concept
myself
of my
to figure
3
out how
pieces.
powerful is
I just don't know if I'm
each
gonna get
piece.
this done by
And
tomorrow.
this
Probably
is gonna
not.
require us to use one of our favorite formulas on this channel. FMA,
Exactly.
force equals mass times acceleration. But actually, we need something a little...
My McDonald's rewards gets you.
I'm not a good
breakfast
painter,
before
but
work. Free
I
fries
enjoy
at
doodling in
lunch
it.
for the friend who said they didn't want any. And whatever a meal is at this hour. Join My McDonald's rewards to get free McDs.
While you wait, can I offer you a snack? Oh, you brought your own Armstrong cheese.
Yeah, we always bring our own. It's okay to bring your own Armstrong cheese.
a little beefier. See, FMA focuses on an object in constant acceleration. However, we're focusing on a singular punch, which doesn't have a continuous motion. It stops once it makes impact, and the force applied during that impact is what we're after. Luckily, there is a formula for that too, and it looks like this. F equals delta P over delta T. Basically, the change in momentum divided by the change in time. And to figure out that first bit, the change in momentum, we need two things: the mass and the velocity at the time of impact. That's a lot of small pieces to find, so we best make like Donkey Kong and start collecting them. And we gotta start somewhere, so let's start with the mass. In DK64's final boss battle, the MC announces DK's weight as 800 pounds. There is a slight dispute over this on the internet because, according to some people, Donkey Kong Country 2's player guide has his weight set to 450 pounds. But I read all 129 pages of that thing and I couldn't find it anywhere. So 800 pounds or 363 kilograms it is. Nice! First puzzle piece found. Although DK isn't going to get to put all of his weight behind a punch, so what we need to do is calculate something called his effective mass, which is the weight of Donkey Kong's body that will actually go into the punch. It's not just the weight of the arm either. That will heavily limit the amount of force. You want to get as much weight behind you as you can. By rotating your body like boxers do, you can throw significantly more weight behind each blow. Looking at DK's punch specifically, he's using a punch type known as a rear hook, which is a kind of punch that is thrown with your dominant hand from behind in an arcing motion. Interestingly enough, while the rear hook often looks like the strongest punch, it's actually wasting a lot of time, energy, and effective mass compared to just straight punches. But nonetheless, that's what DK likes to do, so that's what we have to work with. On average, a professional boxer can get about 14.88% plus or minus 6.74% of their body mass into a good rear hook. Given we're seeing DK punch through literal rocks or through my face in a game of Smash, I'm gonna go with the higher end and say he maxes out at the 21.62% level, which puts his effective mass at about 172.95 pounds or 78.48 kilograms. Boom! There's another piece. And it's not a small one either. That's like having a whole Hampshire sheep thrown at your face. For reference, Mike Tyson
How to figure out these shuttles, supposedly.
20 pounds or 100 kilograms, meaning his rear hook at the top end could have
let's
carried
see.
an effective mass of 47.56
No,
pounds.
where's the
or
picture? Where's the
21.62
reference picture?
kilograms, just over a quarter of DK's power. And I don't think
That's not
any
gonna
of
help
us
me.
really fancy getting a hit from Tyson, let alone DK.
I'm trying to
Well,
get too
unless-
detailed, and I need to stop it.
Buttery, golden, flaky Ritz you love. Now perfected
Fuck
for
it.
life
Let's
on
make a
wheels.
mess.
Where you go, they go too. Ritz to go.
Yeah.
Jake Paul, I suppose. Now it's time to calculate the velocity of DK's fists. Going frame by frame, DK takes about 13 frames to throw a punch from its furthest back point to its target. With the game usually running at 60 frames per second, that means it
Any
happens
blue?
in 0.22
Oh, God.
seconds. But
Maybe.
that's just
Maybe
time it
blue.
takes
Oh, that didn't feel good.
the The velocity requires us to also calculate how far the punch is actually traveling. And that requires some other stats about DK, namely his wingspan. You see, when DK gets ready to punch, he pulls all the way back, even shifting his weight before launching forward, bringing his fist across his full wingspan. Now, when it comes to humans, wingspan is pretty easy to figure out. Typically, a human's wingspan is the same length as their height. Not always, mind you. My wingspan is actually 3 inches shorter, but nevertheless, it's a pretty good baseline. Gorillas, on the other hand, have much larger wingspans, usually averaging a 35% increase compared to their height. Of course, I knew that wouldn't necessarily apply to Donkey Kong, so I pulled out the pixel measurements to test Bonanza specifically. And what I found is that DK is well above the average. His wingspan is a whopping 85% larger than his height. That is an insane reach. He'd definitely be winning against Tyson now, or maybe he'd like to take on LeBron James instead. But 85% of what exactly? We're still lacking actual measurements. Well, this is where I ran into some issues. DK size
I need a better
let's call
version
it
of shading.
across games. Comparing it to our officially confirmed canon Mario height of 1.55 meters or 5 foot and 1 inch, in Mario Kart, DK is about 7'2". In Mario Party, he's around 8 foot. In Mario vs. Donkey Kong, he's 8'6", and in Smash Ultimate, he's 10'2". However, it is widely agreed upon that DK's height while fully standing up is actually 7'10". In Bonanza, we see him crouch next to characters like Cranky Kong, maintaining the same height difference that we've seen from him in other parts of the franchise. So he's not taller or shorter in this game either. So we're going to stick with this for our measurements. This puts DK's wingspan at 14 foot and 3 inches, and his punch velocity at about 44 miles per hour, or about 19.74 meters per second. That gives us the first of the many parts of our equation. Delta P equals 78.48 kilograms multiplied by 19.74 meters per second, which equals 1,549 kilogram meters per second. Now, it's just the change in time we need. And fortunately, this one's a little easier to figure out. Going frame by frame once again, we can see that while the impact happens in a single frame, it takes 7 frames for his arm and fist to fully decelerate, which means DK is going from 19.74 meters per second to 0 meters per second in just 0.12 seconds. So by plugging that into our formula, we find that DK's punch has an impact force of 12,908 newtons, or about 2,902 pounds of force. For reference, the human skull is estimated to be able to withstand up to 6,227 newtons before completely shattering. DK would not only break a person's skull, he would shatter it twice over. No wonder poor Ness goes flying off the stage after DK charges up. If anything, I'm surprised Smash characters aren't throwing themselves off the stage. The fall is probably safer. And things only get more deadly when you consider the main gimmick of this game, the Bonanza transformations. When Pauline sings certain songs, DK transforms into one of 5 different animals to give him new abilities. Sometimes it's an elephant who sucks up dirt with its trunk, sometimes it's an ostrich that can glide, a zebra that can run fast, or a snake that can double jump. It's a really cool set of mechanics that works really well with the completely destructible environments. It can be easy to look at something like this and think you'd never be able to make something like that, but thanks to our sponsor Boot.dev, you can. Boot.dev is building the smartest way to help you become a master programmer, whether you want to make video games, websites, or even your own ARG. I've tried my hand at website building before, as well as the odd little video game, but I was always limited by 2 things: my lack of focus and my lack of true coding experience. Sure, I could drag an image somewhere or write a block of text, but I had no way to make it look how I wanted. That is where Boot.dev comes in, because you see, they have managed to crack the code on how to actually help people improve their skills by turning the learning into a game. No, I'm serious. By completing lessons, you gain experience, grow levels, there's even bi-monthly boss fights. And the lessons aren't just reading. You actually get to write the code for yourself and practice as much as you want until you're a master on both the battleground and the computer. They have a bunch of courses for whatever kind of project you're making too. You can learn Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, Linux, you name it, they've got it. So if you want to finally be able to make that game, maybe one that can actually run on the Switch 2 without all those frame rate issues, or you're just looking for a fun way to learn a new skill and want to...
Alright, I gotta figure out the show blade thing.
Try Whiskas pouch.
Where's the shoulder blade down? Up there.
Skill in one of the funnest ways I've experienced, head on over to boot.dev or click the link in the description to try it out for yourselves. All of the content is completely free to read and watch, and if you decide to go all in, you could use my code GameTheory to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Thanks again to boot.dev for sponsoring this video, but I should probably get back to DK's transformations. Like I said, there's the elephant, the ostrich, the zebra, the snake, and then there's the first and arguably simplest transformation, Kong Bonanza.
A gorilla.
Yeah, he may just look like a bigger gorilla, but the whole point of this power-up is he becomes so much stronger, able to break things he can't normally.
Come
so,
on.
thanks to this huge boost in size and strength, what kind of forces are we now playing with? Well, by using this moment right here, I was able to
Gives me
calculate
an
that
idea
DK's
of what I
height
need.
increases by around 52% instantly. But once again, this is where DK's size inconsistencies come into play. See, while his height increases by 52%,
If I knew what I was
his
looking
wingspan
at, it would
actually
help a lot.
increases by 93%, leading to his wingspan being a gargantuan 27 feet and 7 inches, or 8.4 meters. However, despite this new massive distance his punches now have to travel, his increased strength has somehow allowed him to keep his 44-mile-per-hour speed. The only challenging part now is figuring out what his new mass is, because it was clear that different parts of him grow different amounts. And without the game files being readily available for me to shove into Blender like I usually do, it's not going to be that simple to figure out. Instead, I took a bunch of extra measurements from DK. His head, his chest, his waist, his feet, and from that, the best estimation I could calculate was that he's grown on average around 72% in total when accounting for the various differences. But while his size may have gone up by that amount, that's not going to be the same for his mass because of something we talked about a few times on this channel, the square cube law. What this basically boils down to is that even though his size has increased by 1.72 times, his weight would actually increase by 1.72 to the third time. So if he weighed 800 pounds before, in Kong Bonanza form, he's going to weigh 4,070 pounds, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually just the same weight as a giraffe. Heavy, but not crazy heavy. But now
I don't know, I think the weight of a giraffe is pretty crazy for a weight.
21.62%, giving us an effective punching mass of 880 pounds or 399 kilograms. Yeah, DK is going from punching with the weight of a sheep to the weight of his former self. But with that, we have the last piece of our puzzle, and plugging them all into our impact equation, we can see that in Kong Bonanza form, DK's punch has an impact force of 65,403 newtons, or
Square point of sale. Payment. Install it now.
Fuck off, I'm busy. Oh yeah, I should check my chat, see what's up here. Do. Nope, dump it there.
Oh my gosh, it's popping. That's crazy.
newtons, or 14,702 pounds of force. I don't even know how I'm going to begin to quantify that, but you know me, I'm damn sure gonna try. See, other than the transformations, there is one other mechanic that makes DK Bonanza stand out. Its destructible environment. Donkey Kong can smash almost anything and everything in this game, so I figured let's take a look at some of the terrain he can destroy to see whether it gives us any kind of understanding of the numbers we've just calculated. There are several types of terrain in this game, like sand, snow, mud, but the one that caught my attention was the rock. Specifically, these barrier rocks that block off certain areas. They are some of the more challenging rocks to smash, but shocker, barrier isn't a real type of rock. Don't worry though, with enough digging or punching, it shouldn't be too hard to figure out what kind of rock this is. Let's start with the location. Inga Isle, where the game takes place, seems to be a volcanic island, as evidenced by the large mound in the center, the fact that it appears in the middle of the ocean, and, you know, there are lava levels. That makes these hardened walls that cut through the rest of the stone and dirt volcanic dikes, which is hardened magma flow that falls vertically into some kind of crevice. Dikes are most commonly made of basalt and granite, because both are made from cooling magma or lava, with basalt being made from lava rapidly cooling against the air, and granite being caused by slowly cooling magma. However, unlike human bones, whose breaking points are regularly measured in pure newtons of force or pounds of force, these rocks have breaking points or compression strength measured in PSI, or pounds per square inch, which is basically the pounds of force divided by the area that force is applied, i.e. the size of Donkey Kong's fists. Granite's PSI roughly tops out at around 36,000 PSI, while basalt tops out at around 58,000 PSI. So does DK have what it takes to break these rocks? Well, once again, we need to whip out the pixel measurements and see. From comparing his fists to his body, we can see that in his base form, his fists measure a whopping 19.5 inches or 50 centimeters wide and about 15.5 inches or 40 centimeters long, meaning his final fist area would be roughly 2 square feet or 0.2 square meters. That is huge, even for a gorilla, but his fists have always been unusually massive, so I shouldn't be surprised at this point. And Kong Bonanza's fists are even more massive, measuring in at 42 inches or 107.5 centimeters wide and 25 inches or 63.5 centimeters long, making his total fist area 7.3 square feet or 0.68 square meters. So let's plug those in and see what... in and see what we get. For regular DK, this means 2,900 pounds of force divided by 2 square feet, equaling 10 PSI. And for Kong Bonanza, that's 14,702 pounds of force divided by 7.3 square feet, which equals nearly 14 PSI. Huh, that's not all that much, and certainly nowhere near the 58,000 PSI that you would need to smash the rocks we're seeing in the game. If his hands weren't quite so large and gorilla-like and instead were more like a precision jackhammer, then he'd probably be in a good spot. But size does matter, because it means he's distributing all of that force over too large an area. It's still gonna be deadly for a normal human, but against some of Kong's other big threats, it's not gonna do him much good. Except, as we can all see, DK is able to break these rocks, even in base form, so clearly I'm the problem here.
It's me, I'm the problem, it's me.
Somewhere in my calculations there must be a mistake, some variable that has thrown everything else out of alignment. But I'm not going to be defeated by math. I will figure out how deadly DK's punch truly is. It's time for my own Bonanza transformation. Sing the Theorist song, Stoops! Okay, let's do this. If we know that base DK needs to be punching with a PSI of 58,000, we should be able to use that to work backwards. DK's hand size isn't changing. Those pixel measurements are pretty hard to deny. Instead, it's the pounds of force we need to change. So we just need to multiply 58,000 PSI by DK's 2 square feet fist area, which gives us 17,530,500 pounds of force, or 77,977,103 newtons, which for reference would be like 4/5 of the Eiffel Tower crushing you. But we can go a step further, because even though we technically figured out the total force, we did a bunch of calculations to get to this point. So I want to know exactly what else has now changed. If that force is delta P divided by delta T, then one of those is the culprit. And it's unlikely to be the time taken for the collision, as that happened in 0.12 seconds, which is accurate for most collisions, so it has to be our delta P, the change in momentum. So, by reversing this equation and multiplying 77,977,103 newtons by 0.12, we get a change in momentum of 9,357,252 kilogram meters per second. But that came from DK's effective mass times velocity, and we know the mass is right based on the canon information, which means the velocity must be where the problem is. So, by reversing the equation one more time, we find out that DK's fist is traveling at the insane velocity of, drumroll please, 119,224.7 meters, or 266,636 miles per hour. That's just insane! Maybe that's why the game's frame rate was so janky. I guess even with all the upgrades for the Switch 2, it still isn't fast enough to keep up. Again, for reference, to escape Earth's gravity, the Apollo 10 spaceship had to reach speeds of only 25,000 miles per hour. Heck, the speed of sound is only 343 meters per second, and Kong is breaking that 347 times over with every single punch. If he punches one enemy, the entire army might fall due to the sonic booms. And with the energy behind it, he's not just destroying rocks or obliterating enemies, he's going to be able to melt steel beams. Although DK would also likely be collapsing like everyone and everything around him, because with every action comes an equal and opposite reaction. DK is also decelerating, and his hand is also experiencing those 77,977,103 newtons. The toughest single bone in the body, the femur, can only withstand 4,000 newtons of force. The fingers are way less, at around 1,485 newtons. Now, gorilla bones are significantly denser than human bones, around 3 times more. But given we're dealing with nearly 78 million newtons, it's just not going to be anywhere near enough. Even with his 72% increase in size and strength in Kong Bonanza mode, his hands won't just be broken, they'd be turned into a furry pulp. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. World premiere on Game Theory. Minecraft's new weapon is completely broken.
Feeling like your dreams are out of reach?
Yes.
RBC has programs and resources to help you open the door. With RBCX Music, RBC Training Ground, and RBC Scholarships, your idea of your highest potential happens here.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube. And YouTube Music Premium, a whole app just for streaming music, uninterrupted. Try 1 month free of charge. The Zelda timeline is broken again. While Echoes of Wisdom recently received an official spot in the Zelda timeline, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are yet to receive the same definitive level of treatment. But don't worry, loyal theorists, because today I'm here to fix that.
Oh, God damn it, why am I getting just
Hello,
things tonight?
Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's finally found the Triforce of Courage to talk about the Zelda timeline. This is one of those game franchises I've been wanting to cover for a while, but it's an intimidating challenge to say the least. In 2011, Nintendo released the Hyrule Historia, containing a definitive timeline of when every game in the franchise took place, only to then release the Zelda Encyclopedia 7 years later that changed it all. And as more Zelda games came out, people wanted to know more than ever where they fit into this established timeline. Recently, it's all been about Echoes of Wisdom, which seem to be combining elements from all over the Zelda timeline, causing a lot of debate as to where this was supposed to take place. Thankfully, good guy Nintendo came out a few months later to give it an official spot in the timeline, showing us that they do still care about the timeline, and that games are going to continue to be added to it. But that then begs the question, why haven't they done the same thing for Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom? The creators have said vague things like it's at the end of the timeline, but which timeline? Then, a few months back, this image was presented at a Nintendo event displaying Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to be in its own separate place, not connected to the rest of the timelines, which brought this debate back to the forefront. Which one is it? Is it at the end? Is it separate? Is it so far in the future it's basically separate? Their response? It's up to the player's imagination. What? No, that's not how this works, Nintendo. You can't just say that one set of games are definitively in this one specific place in the timeline, but then for others just say it's up to interpretation. If you're going to be definitive about one, there has to be a definitive answer for the other. And so today, I am going to do what Nintendo won't. I'm going to do what we have done, 3 times on this channel already? And figure out the definitive timeline for The Legend of Zelda. Because actually, I believe there is a solution that can dig Nintendo out of this hole and set them up for success in the future while also keeping us, the fans, happy and content with a cohesive timeline. So, let's get started. As a quick refresher, how the timeline currently works is that after a couple of games, we reach the events of Ocarina of Time. And thanks to time travel, the timeline splits into 3. One of those is the child timeline. After Link defeats Ganon, he returns to his original timeline where he was a child, leading to games like Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess. Then there's the adult timeline, the one Link traveled to defeat Ganon and subsequently left when he returned to the child timeline, leaving this timeline saved but without a hero, leading to games like Wind Waker and Spirit Tracks. Finally, you have the downfall timeline. This is where Link failed to defeat Ganon, and so Ganon takes over and the world turns to ruin. This is the timeline where games like the original Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and recently Echoes of Wisdom take place. According to Nintendo, it sits right here, after Triforce Heroes but before the original Legend of Zelda. Fun side note here, I actually had a whole theory written about the timeline placement for Echoes of Wisdom months before this announcement, and actually, I came to the same conclusion. Look, here's the script starting date, and here is the line about its placement. Alas, that theory will never see the light of day now. But I am happy that this placement from Nintendo makes a lot of sense. Echoes of Wisdom uses the same map as A Link to the Past, just expanded, which is one of the 2 maps the Downfall timeline uses constantly. Areas from A Link to the Past, like the Desert Palace, the Swamp Palace, and the Eastern Palace, are now withered, aged, and broken archaeological sites. You've also got the Echo of Blue Pig Ganon, which implies the main villain, Null, has seen this Ganon before in order to make an Echo in the first place. And that version of Ganon only really shows up in the Downfall timeline. And finally, the Triforce, although it's not called that in this game, still has 3 pieces. Whereas, after the era of decline, and by the time of the original Legend of Zelda, the 3rd piece has been lost for so long that some don't even believe there to be a 3rd piece. So, Nintendo clearly did their homework, and now Echoes of Wisdom is solidly part of the Zelda timeline. But now, let's take a look at the real problem children in this timeline. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. As I mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of comments about it being at the end of the timeline, and in the Creating a Champion lore book for Breath of the Wild, it also places Breath of the Wild 10,000 years into the future, and for a long time, this actually made a lot of sense to us here at Theorist. We did a whole theory about how Breath of the Wild was at the end of the timeline like we've been told, but rather than it being of just one timeline, it was of all 3 converging back into one thanks to Hyrule Warriors, allowing it to remain at the end of the timeline and far in the future, but also allowing for all the weird elements from multiple different games, like rock salt existing, which implies that the land was once completely flooded like it does in the adult timeline, the Zora and Rito being able to exist side by side rather than one evolving from the other, and the Mirror of Twilight existing alongside Lynors and Koroks. It all made sense. However, unlike Echoes of Wisdom, Nintendo has still refused to put Hyrule Warriors into the canon timeline, which means the timelines haven't converged, and so Breath of the Wild has to take place at the end of just one of them, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me personally, but not only do they refuse to converge the timelines canonically, they then double down with the direct sequel Tears of the Kingdom. This thing is filled with so many contradictions, it not only ruins its own placement in the timeline, but also
it looks like the algorithms changed back again. I'm losing hours.
As we know it. One of the major issues comes from how the Kingdom of Hyrule was said to be established. Up until Tears of the Kingdom, we believed what the Hyrule Historia told us. After Skyward Sword, the people living in the sky came back down to the surface and, quote, the descendants of the goddess Hylia, who was reincarnated as Princess Zelda, established the Kingdom of Hyrule. However, in Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda travels through time to the past, because things weren't confusing enough after doing it the first time. Now, we have to have 2 entries for Tears of the Kingdom, one in the present and one in the past. But anyway, when Zelda meets King past. He says this.
We are the king and queen who founded Hyrule after all.
So wait, was it Zelda from Skyward Sword who founded Hyrule, or was it King Rauru? These two things don't seem to be able to work together, or at least that's what I thought, until Nintendo released the Tears of the Kingdom Masterworks, because inside this Japanese-only book is a breakdown of the Zonai timeline. After the world was created by the three goddesses, Earth was entrusted to Hylia. The Zonai at this point are living on the surface, but later moved to the sky. Over time, Zonai numbers begin to dwindle, so they choose to return to the surface and mingle with the surface dwellers. And seeing as King Rauru is a Zonai and Queen Sonia, well, isn't, they mean mingle. That, my friends, opens up a teeny tiny window of opportunity for things to work out. Notice how the Hyrule Historia says the descendants of Princess Zelda established the Kingdom of Hyrule, not Zelda herself. At the end of Skyward Sword, Zelda and Link begin to build life on the surface. These are the first Hylians, and wouldn't you know it, Sonia is a Hylian herself. She also has markings on her body depicting Sheikah eyes and the Triforce, all things that reflect the history of the people from Skyward Sword, her ancestors. She is one of those descendants that the Hyrule Historia talks about. That would mean that Skyward Sword happens between the Zonai living in the sky and returning to Earth. Then, when the Zonai return to the surface to repopulate, they would run into these Hylian descendants and mingle with them, eventually establishing Hyrule and leading to the events of the past in Tears of the Kingdom. But if that's true, why do Rauru and Sonia not recognize the names Link or Zelda? Link.
That is not a name I have heard.
Sonia is clearly versed in the history of the events of Skyward Sword, given her markings, so she should know about the legendary Link and Zelda, right? Well, maybe not. Throughout Skyward Sword, Link is referred to as the goddess's chosen hero. We see the same thing in Wind Waker. The Link from Ocarina of Time isn't called Link once. The prologue says he is known as the hero of time, and in Twilight Princess, they mention the hero of legend. Clearly, as time went on and the events of Skyward Sword became legend, the title stuck, but Link's real name was likely forgotten. In the real world, this happens all the time. The earliest known recorded name of a person that we have is from around 3400 to 3000 BC. The name is Kushan. However, it's unclear whether this is a name of a person or whether it was their title. Either way, one of those elements was noted down and the other was lost to time. It's also worth mentioning that in Hyrule, it's tradition that the royal family name their daughter Zelda, but Rauru and Sonia are the first king and queen of Hyrule, so this tradition clearly hasn't begun yet. It may even be that Zelda's visit to the past was what started that tradition, just something I was thinking about while writing this. So, there you have it. Tears of the Kingdom's past segments go here, and the present events happen at the end of the timeline after Breath of the Wild. Easy! If that was the only major issue with this game. This next one is something that a lot of people took issue with, and it kind of screws up what we've already solved. The Imprisoning War. In Tears of the Kingdom, the Imprisoning War is an event that occurs in the past. Once Ganondorf takes a special stone and receives unlimited power, the seven sages, including Zelda, fight him but fail. As a last resort, Rauru, the Sage of Light, attacks Ganondorf using his sealing power to trap Ganon within his own body, turning him into the dehydrated Ganon from the beginning of the game. But this isn't the first time we've heard about the Imprisoning War. It was also part of the prologue from A Link to the Past. In that version of the story, when Link from Ocarina of Time is defeated by Ganondorf, Ganondorf takes the Triforce and receives ultimate power. The seven sages, including Zelda and the Sage of Light Rauru, seal Ganon away in the Dark World. Those sound pretty similar, right? But did you spot the problem? A Link to the Past's Imprisoning War takes place after Ocarina of Time as part of the Downfall timeline. Tears of the Kingdom has to come before Ocarina of Time because of the founding of Hyrule. Yet, they still really want you to know that the Imprisoning War definitely happened in this timeline before Hyrule was even founded.
That was the Imprisoning War.
That was the Imprisoning War.
The Hyundai Shift into Drive sales event is back, just in time for summer road trip season. Make this summer electric.
Summer's
in a brand new
over.
Ioniq 6. What are you waiting for?
just needed to move the imprisoning war to an earlier point in the timeline, just to correct for Nintendo's mistake. Or maybe there had always been two imprisoning wars, much like we've had two world wars. They just happen to be called the same thing because they depict similar events. But even with those seemingly simple fixes, it creates more problems. Like, how is there a dehydrated Ganon living beneath Hyrule throughout the entire Zelda timeline, and yet other Ganons are constantly resurrecting? Ganon has to be slain to be resurrected, and that just hasn't happened, making the past events of Tears of the Kingdom unable to occur early in the timeline. There's also the existence of the Rito in both the present and past of Tears of the Kingdom. The first time we saw the Rito was in Wind Waker. They looked more human than bird and were descendants of the Zora, evolving after the Great Flood in the adult timeline. The Rito in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, however, are drastically different, now looking way more like birds than humans. This might just seem like they evolved over time, but then we meet the same Rito in the past of Tears of the Kingdom, and they exist at the same time as the Zora they evolved from. What? The only possible explanation I could come up with was that these bird-looking Rito followed Raru's lead and mingled with the Zora, creating hybrid Rito, which is what we see in Wind Waker, and then just basically piecing out like the Gerudo did in the Downfall timeline. Still around somewhere, we just don't know where. But as you can imagine, I'm not particularly pleased with that answer, and I'm sure you guys aren't either. I kind of understand why Nintendo has been so coy about this whole thing. Any possible explanation feels like we're clutching at straws. Even the catch-all "it's so far into the future" idea has holes in it. It seems like all Nintendo wanted to do was make some cool games, and they ended up digging themselves into a hole that is now impossible to get out of. And so now they're just sweeping it under the rug and hoping it goes away. But then when you release another new game like Echoes of Wisdom and then almost immediately put it on the official timeline, it shows that you are still thinking about it, that there is an answer here. Look, I get it. The timeline is a delicate balance. Before they released it, we'd never even considered the possibility that Link could canonically die in Ocarina of Time to create a branching path. Wait a minute, why is that the only death that we consider canon? I know Ocarina of Time is one of the most beloved games in the franchise, and obviously it's hugely important for the timeline. But if Nintendo has told us that failure is canon in one game, who's to say failure in other games wouldn't also create new threads of the timeline? In Echoes of Wisdom, Link defeats Ganon, but Ganon's spear then causes Link to fall into the Still World, and so Link fails to restore peace to Hyrule, leading Zelda to become the hero, and eventually the events of the original Legend of Zelda as we established earlier. In Breath of the Wild, when Calamity Ganon first attacks Hyrule, Link is defeated and then revived 100 years later, eventually fighting Calamity Ganon again, destroying Hyrule Castle, allowing Gloom to appear, and leading Zelda and Link to find the dehydrated Ganon in Tears of the Kingdom. Link doesn't always succeed, and yet it still leads to previously established parts of the timeline. If Link didn't fall into the Still World, the era of decline might not have happened. If Link beat Calamity Ganon first try in Breath of the Wild, Zelda might not have ever traveled back in time to set the events of dehydrated Ganon in motion. So, what if we consider other failures in other games to also be canon? It doesn't have to be Link either. Echoes of Wisdom showed us that other important characters can affect the outcomes. Suddenly,
It's the sandwich, Tim's new Thanksgiving stack, seasoned Canadian turkey, home-style stuffing, and cranberry sauce. Exclusively for Tim's Rewards members, get an $8.99 dinner deal.
suddenly, if any game can create new branching paths, then the possibilities for stories suddenly becomes a lot more expansive. And this mindset, I believe, will not only allow us to place Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom somewhere in the timeline that makes sense, but it could explain why they've been shown as separated from the rest of the timeline. The prologue to Skyward Sword says, "One dark day the earth cracked wide and malevolent forces rushed from the fissure." This is Demise seeking to rule the world. Now, one thing I've always noticed is how Demise shares a striking resemblance to Ganondorf in the past of Tears of the Kingdom, once he takes the power of the Secret Stone. The imprisoning war that then ensued was fought in the depths underneath Hyrule, with Rauru succeeding in sealing Ganon away. But what if Rauru failed to seal Ganon away? If he failed, Ganon, a malevolent force that wants to rule the world, would have defeated Rauru and the sages and broken out from the underground, causing chasms, rushing out of the depths to destroy Hyrule. This would have led the goddess Hylia to lift the surviving Hylians to the sky, just like we saw in Skyward Sword. Rauru failing to seal Ganon creates a new timeline thread, the main timeline thread, which I'm going to call the Demise timeline. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, on the other hand, play out as we see in-game. This is the thread where Rauru succeeds to seal Ganon, and so it becomes removed from the rest of the timeline. Let's call this the Imprisoned timeline. This is why Skyloft and the Zonai never interact in Skyward Sword, because Skyloft being raised into the sky only happens in the Demise timeline where Hyrule and the Zonai were completely destroyed. When Zelda and Link defeat Demise and return to the surface, there's nothing there, and their descendants begin to establish a new Hyrule. It's just been so long that there's no one left that remembers the Hyrule that once was. It's also why there are two imprisoning wars. In the Demise timeline, the first one technically doesn't exist because it failed, but the idea of it was passed down, and so many years later, in the Downfall timeline, the seven sages tried once again, and this time they succeeded. Even the Rito makes sense in this version of the timeline. They existed in the past alongside the Zora, and in the Imprisoned timeline, they just continued existing. Wind Waker never occurs, and so no mingling with the Zora. But in the Demise timeline, they've hybridized with the Zora in order to survive the mass amount of water now present due to the Great Flood. This new branch can also have an entirely new history that we know nothing about, allowing for things to feel similar to previous games, but with entirely different explanations. The rock salt that covers the landscape implies a flood. Well, who's to say that there can't be a future game exploring a different flood that affected this timeline specifically? Why is there the Temple of Time and Lon Lon branch from Ocarina of Time in Breath of the Wild? Well, there's a whole bunch of history between Raru's success of sealing Ganon and Breath of the Wild. Much like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are at the same time, just in parallel timelines, so too could the Great Flood and the building of the Temple of Time run parallel to Wind Waker and Ocarina in this new imprisoned timeline. So there you go, Nintendo. If you do truly believe the timeline can be interpreted in a number of ways and may change depending on the discoveries that have come to light and the player's imagination, then let me use my imagination to give you a get out of fandom jail free card. Take this web of timelines and finally place Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in a way that works within your established rules. This will give you so much more freedom in the future. All of those failures or successes can open up the door to so many possibilities that before just wouldn't have been possible without getting the fanbase even more upset. Now what you have to do is make a great game, because almost any combination of stuff you use can fit in one of these branches. Heck, even those games you said aren't canon now could be. Hyrule Warriors, the Tingle series, Zelda CDI, all of them could now just be another one of these many branches without messing with your core canon timeline, as it were. Where in this massive web should those go? I think I'll leave that down to the loyal theorists watching to figure out. You guys can let me know down in the comments. In the meantime, theorists, remember, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed our deep dive into timelines, check out this video where we explain the entire Minecraft timeline one block at a time. Don't worry, there's no branching paths this time, theorists.
Right. Need to wait for this to dry and then go over it with a marker. Well, I should be able to finish this tomorrow. I don't want to do anything else tonight. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi. I wasn't looking at my chat, like, at all. Sorry. How are you doing tonight? Are you still there? Probably not.
It's exciting to be here today. As you already know, we are currently partnered with Illumination Entertainment to bring you the Super Mario movie starring Chris Pratt, coming to theaters this spring. As the kids say, get hype, it'll be a banger. However, what you may not already know is we at Nintendo have been so inspired by this project that we've purchased our own movie studio. Soon, Kirby, Samus, Link, and more will get their time on the big screen. And that time may come sooner than you think. I present to you a first look at the NCU.
Alright. Hello. Sorry.
It's a game. The show that going forward will be voiced by Chris Pratt. Speaking of good old Star-Lord, if you want to know what his voice is gonna sound like in the upcoming Mario movie, check out the new episode of Film Folklore.
Don't touch anything.
Just launched alongside
Just
this
leave it to dry.
Mario
Think you
movie
can do that?
weekend here on the channels. I suppose you could call it a theory binge watch. If by binge watching you mean like 2 15-minute episodes back to back. I'll admit, binge here is being used pretty loosely. Anyway, these are 2 related episodes that are better watched together. I guarantee that you're gonna be stunned by some of the things we sussed out about the Super Mario movie. Things are gonna be in the corner, on screen, and assuming YouTube isn't stroking out this weekend, right alongside the recommended feed. But before you go and watch that one, stick around because the Mario movie isn't actually the biggest piece of Nintendo movie news that's come out in recent months. In an announcement that just kind of slipped under everyone's collective radar, Nintendo bought their own movie studio. You heard that right, Nintendo. The video game company has decided to get into the movie business. And no, that's not a translation error, it's not some misunderstanding, and it's not a hoax. It is legit. Here's the notice of acquisition filing, right here from the desk of Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa himself. They went out and bought the Japanese studio Dynamo Pictures with the intent to change its name to Nintendo Pictures. In their own words, Nintendo Pictures is going to be focused on, quote, development of visual content utilizing Nintendo IP. Ripping off that corporate speak, that's movies and TV shows based on Super Mario Brothers, Zelda, Metroid, Star Fox, a pantheon of characters each with their own stories, all culminating in a massive crossover movie, Super Smash Brothers. And then you're going to get Phase 2, and it's going to introduce Fire Emblem and Pokemon into the mix, and suddenly you're going to have another big Avengers level crossover, Smash Brothers 2 Melee. Bayonetta's gonna show up in Phase 3, and then her short little fan with her powers is gonna show up in Phase 4. Then you're gonna get yourself a Pikmin series, which is gonna go straight to streaming, but will be required viewing to understand the whole overarching narrative of the thing. Now, admittedly, I might be jumping the gun with all of this, but also it's pretty obvious to see how they could easily head in that sort of a direction. But before we get into the what of it all, I actually want to get into the why. Now, I gotta be honest, I did not see this one coming. 6 months ago, I did a whole video about how video game studios kept buying each other. And in that episode, I took it to its logical conclusion. With so much acquisition of video game companies, who was gonna own who when the dust settled? In that episode, my predictions were all based on the idea that massive media companies with streaming quotas to fill, like Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Disney, and Comcast, would want to buy game developers in order to acquire their IP. If you look at purchases like Disney buying Marvel, Star Wars, and Fox, that largely pans out. And when it comes to video game IP, the jewel in the crown is Nintendo. No publisher has such a deep and well-beloved cast of characters in its roster. And while I think any of these companies will eagerly sacrifice their firstborn for a chance at courting
while I have it up here.
was that Nintendo would be swiping left to any and all potential suitors. They're the girl that's too good for you. They're content to stay single while playing the field a little bit. You might be able to produce a movie in collaboration with them, but you're not going to get her to marry you. And now, 6 months later, Nintendo pulling an Uno reverse card on me and buying their own studio. In some ways, the new announcement actually proved me right. They were too good for everyone else, so instead of trusting their IP to other people, they pulled the most Nintendo move Nintendo could make. They decided to do it for themselves. So today, I want to talk about this decision, why it's the most unexpectedly expected move that you could have possibly gotten from the big end. Then I want to dig a bit deeper into the acquisition itself. Who are Dynamo Pictures, and what could Nintendo have planned for them moving forward? Because let me tell you, I suspect that movies are the least ambitious project in their roster. Ready to begin, my friends? Let's go! To start off, why is it such a brilliant move for Nintendo to buy a movie studio? And if it is so brilliant, why isn't anyone else doing it? Let's tackle the second half of the question first. If you haven't noticed, video game movies don't have themselves the best reputation. They aren't faithful to the original source material, they cast big-name actors rather than the people who are right for the role. And to top it all off, they're usually just awful movies. Doom, Assassin's Creed, Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil, you name it, it's be pretty disappointing. At absolute best, you're dealing with something that's bland and unmemorable, like last year's Uncharted movie. Wait, what? Really? It was this year? And right at the dumpster fire mountain.
Oh yeah, I wanted to go see Uncharted.
Of course, the Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993.
King Koopa here. I'd like the Koopa special. Pterodactyl tail on that.
I know this is gonna sound a little strange, but I want you to meet my father.
Here's what the actor for Mario himself had to say about it. Quote, the worst thing I ever did, Super Mario Brothers. It was a nightmare. The whole experience was a nightmare. It had a husband and wife team directing whose arrogance had been mistaken for talent. After so many weeks, their own agent told them to get off the set. Nightmare. Idiots. As the story goes, he would get
drunk before each day of filming and continue drinking between takes. This wasn't a Super Mario Brothers movie, but it also wasn't a sober Mario Brothers movie either. And while Nintendo never directly expressed their displeasure with production, Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto said in an interview, quote, "In the end, it was a very fun project that they put a lot of effort into. The one thing that I still have some regrets about is that the movie may have tried to get a little too close to what the Mario Brothers video games were. And in that sense, it became a movie that was about a video game rather than being an entertaining movie in and of itself. Too close to what the games were, huh? I too will never forget the first time that I heard Toad's guitar solo playing from a steamy back alley while getting ready to fight a guy with blonde cornrows named Bowser and his pair of shrunken-headed Goomba minions. All joking aside though, former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé said in 2017 that the film, quote, left a really bad taste in the mouth of the developers and that horror stories about its production circulated throughout the company. Basically, that one experience scared them away from movies for decades. You know what? That's a shame, because only a few years prior they'd partnered with an animation studio to make a Mario anime that was not terrible. Luigi even gets to save the day. Fun fact, this movie also introduces us to Princess Peach's fiancé. This guy, Prince Haru, a blue worm that they refer to as a dog. Translations in the late 80s be weird. But companies are starting to realize that there's good money to be made from video game movies when they're done right. The first Sonic movie earned an incredible $320 million. The sequel did even better at $404. It's currently the 9th highest grossing movie of this year. But Detective Pikachu topped them all, earning an incredible $433 million worldwide, putting it squarely in the top 20 highest grossing movies of 2019, which is saying a lot because that was a year stacked with power hitters like Endgame, Joker, and Frozen 2. Video game movies, a genre that was considered dead on arrival a decade ago, is suddenly a potential golden goose. The kids that grew up with these franchises now have disposable income to buy the tickets to make your movie a success, and so the gold rush is real. Mass Effect is getting a TV show coming to Amazon, BioShock is coming to Netflix, Blumhouse Studios is doing something with the FNAF movie, maybe. The point is that Nintendo, like everyone else, should be packaging up their IP to license to other production companies. But nope, they had one bad experience, they got burned, and they're still nursing the scars. So in true Type A control freak form, they buy a first-party production company with the intent of building it themselves. In fact, as far back as 2017, Reggie Fils-Aimé was already telling us that this was in the cards. Quote again from him, "The Mario movie was a situation where, unfortunately, we did not have a hands-on role. We did not play a key brand champion in the making of that movie, which worked out so horribly." End quote. We didn't have control of it, therefore it failed. Sounds like something I would say. Anyway, buying a production company like this is a move that honestly wouldn't have been that surprising 10 to 15 years ago. It's exactly what Marvel did with Marvel Studios before Disney snatched the whole thing up. And hey, a decades-old strategy? Yeah, kind of on brand with Nintendo. They're a company that's regularly called out for being stuck in the past. Last year, it was revealed that they were finally upgrading their multiplayer servers after 18 years. These things were so old, they were designed for Windows 98. I guess it's good that they skipped the whole Vista era. But the reason buying your own studio
Vista
fell out
was
of
a
favor is because it's financially risky. If you're doing a movie for yourself, suddenly you've built out a whole other arm to your company. You have employees, you have overhead costs, you're funding the project yourself. Sure, if the movie performs well, you're gonna win big. You keep it all. But if it doesn't, well, that's a lot of money that you just flush down the big green pipe. And remember, you specialize in making video games, not making movies, so you're outside of your wheelhouse. Compare that to licensing out your IP like they're currently doing with Illumination. Under that model, Illumination is likely paying for the rights to use your character. It's a payday for you. They're likely sharing any profits that they make with you. Another payday. And they're likely the ones that are footing most, if not all, of the bill. Sure, the upside isn't nearly as strong, but the risk is nearly non-existent. Nearly. You see, in Nintendo's mind, that sort of model doesn't take care of the biggest risk of all. Not the money, the control. There's always the possibility that this external production company can make it dumb, just like the Mario movie did all those years ago. In fact, they are so scared of something like that happening again that in 2015, when Netflix leaked that they might be doing a Legend of Zelda show, Nintendo killed any and all projects with them instantly, including a claymation Star Fox series. Here's the story from Adam Conover from Adam Ruins Everything.
In like 2014 or 15, there was all this news that Netflix was going to make a Legend of Zelda television show. At the same time, I worked at College Humor, and we had a secret project where we were going to make a claymation version of Star Fox with Nintendo. Suddenly there were reports, Netflix isn't doing this Legend of Zelda anymore. And then I heard from my boss, we're not doing the Star Fox anymore. I was like, what happened? He said, oh, someone and Netflix leaked the Legend of Zelda thing. They weren't supposed to talk about it. Nintendo freaked out because it was the first time they had done any IP in years, and they pulled the plug on everything. They pulled the plug on the entire program to adapt these things.
And it might ruin everything, but in this case, Netflix definitely ruined what sounds like a really cool Star Fox project. Just saying. So they want control, but then how does Nintendo lessen the risk? Remember, they make video games, not movies. That's gonna be a big gamble for them. Well, I suspect that's where Illumination Entertainment comes in. Shigeru Miyamoto has been working heavily with Illumination to bring Mario to life, and he is famously an old-school game designer who's all about technology, mechanics, and efficiency. So it's not hard to imagine that he and his team, having watched Illumination Pictures work on the Mario movie, got a feel for the entire process of managing an animated movie production versus managing a game production. And then they went back to Nintendo HQ in Japan and reported, yeah, so the movies, we can totally do the movies ourselves. And this is actually a lesson told in reverse from Nintendo's past. One of the most famous Nintendo stories comes from the 1990s when they partnered with Sony to create a CD-ROM upgrade for the Super Nintendo, a device that would allow the system to play disc-based games and work as like a DVD player. But at the last possible opportunity, Nintendo backed out of the deal, largely because they didn't trust Sony or CDs. They preferred cartridges, an older format that they just so happened to have full control and ownership over. Sensing a pattern much? Sony got burned, but in working with Nintendo, they started to learn the ins and outs of the video game business. They said, hey, we can do that for ourselves, and thus Nintendo gave rise to their greatest rival, the PlayStation. Just like Sony learned the video game business from Nintendo all those years ago, I suspect that now, Nintendo is now learning movies from Illumination. But the most interesting part of this acquisition is the actual company that Nintendo bought, Dynamo Pictures. They're not a massive production company like Marvel Studios. They aren't even an anime studio as you might traditionally think of one. They specialize in 3D, CG, and motion capture. They currently handle contracts for commercial projects, live events, and theme park attractions with 3D animated elements. Basically, they're the team that you call when you need a 3D animator or a motion capture team to create a specific element of a larger project. So while the news reported Nintendo purchased the movie studio, what Nintendo actually purchased was a building full of high-end animators and equipment. So that doesn't necessarily mean they aren't making movies like every headline's been reporting, but the fact that these guys are versed in a multitude of animation formats, specifically in some of the strange, non-traditional formats like live events, feels like it's a purposeful decision by Nintendo. They've always been focused on two major that was released back in 2020. For years, everyone thought Mario and Lego would fit together like, well, there's nothing that fits together better than Lego. And fans would have been satisfied to get some Mushroom Kingdom-centric building sets and Mario minifigs. That's not how Nintendo was gonna do it. They needed to Nintendo-fy Lego Mario, and they did it by including a gamified integration. It's actually really cool, by the way. If you haven't seen what this thing can do, here's a clip.
Lego Mario time!
Like, who does this? Nintendo. You don't see Minecraft sets doing that sort of stuff. Sometimes Nintendo's off-the-wall approach works, sometimes it doesn't. The drive towards doing things differently makes acquiring an experimental and varied production company feel like the perfect fit. It'll allow them to go for that weird, wonderful style that we've come to love from Nintendo. But now, they're just gonna be doing it in the medium of movies. And not just any movies either, because here's the twist, my friends. Nintendo's all about mixing things up, right? I suspect that they're gonna want to do the same with this new acquisition. What if Nintendo Pictures wasn't just a brand label for movies featuring characters like Kirby and Samus, but instead are exclusive Nintendo experiences? I suspect that Nintendo is going to be using them to create new video content streamed exclusively on the Switch, with interactive, gamified elements tied to everything from amiibos and QR codes to the motion controls and gyroscopic abilities of the system. Now, this isn't an entirely new idea. Companies like Netflix have already experimented with interactive, choose-your-path storytelling to a huge amount of success in the streaming world, with companies like Bandersnatch and the interactive Kimmy Schmidt special. They've been looking for years for more of that sort of content, but the issue is that interactive game-movie hybrids are not what people think of when they think Netflix, or even movies. They think video games, and no company is as synonymous with video games as Nintendo. Nintendo Pictures, being a brand name for streaming content and or a whole streaming platform, immediately lets you know this isn't just a movie, it's a Nintendo movie. A movie that's also a game that you can play around with in some additional fun way. I'm not saying I know exactly how it's gonna go, but just like with every new Nintendo console release, I'm excited to see what weird experimental ideas they're gonna be bringing to the table. But hey, while we're waiting on Nintendo to turn their franchises into movies, there are other gaming franchises that have been turned into movies and shows that aren't totally off.
Come on, give me a decent profile picture.
The Witcher over on Netflix. Not only are the games amazing narratively, but also the show over on Netflix really solid, both seasons 1 and season 2. And now, after a stint on Netflix, The Witcher is making a jump back into video game land thanks to today's sponsor, AFK Arena. You guys know, I have been very upfront on this channel that I love a good RPG. That's why I love the Witcher series in the first place, but there just aren't enough hours in the day to play through an entire RPG. Between meetings, fighting
Shoulder blade.
my schedule is packed. Just don't have the time
Well,
to
that's
sit
a
there
shoulder
and
blade.
grind levels or farm
Collarbone.
items, which means I'm often stuck on one level for weeks and weeks, never making any progress. Then I pick up the controller and I'm like, wait, what was I again? How do I play this game? Where is the X button? But that is actually why AFK Arena's been perfect for me lately. If you couldn't guess from the title, AFK Arena allows you to be away from your keyboard, or I guess phone, technically, but it continues the RPG grind for you while you're off doing other things in your life. So whenever I do have a free moment, I can quickly hop in and find that, hey, while I was gone, my team got stronger. I can finally be leveled up enough to go through the dungeon that I was waiting on, all without me having to do the tedious work of grinding myself. But obviously I started this whole section talking about The Witcher. So where's The Witcher, Matt? Why was that such a random thing for you to bring up? Well, don't worry, because AFK Arena wasn't satisfied with just scratching one RPG itch. Now they're doing a crossover with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. You can now get 2 heroes from that franchise to join your AFK Arena squad, Geralt and Yennefer. Toss a coin to your Witcher friends, except here, you don't have to. You don't have to spend any money on this, in fact. Not only is AFK Arena free, but these 2 characters from The Witcher 3 are also free for 3 days. And after that, you'll be able to redeem them for free in other ways, which sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me. So if you want to get your hands on these heroes and start playing a really satisfying mobile RPG experience, you know the drill. Head on down to the description and click the link to start your AFK RPG journey today. Let them know that Game Theory sent you. But, like, really, in the comments around this game, let them know, Game Theory Squad, y'all. Basically, what that does is it trolls them a little bit, which is just funny for me, hopefully for you, but also it lets them know, like, hey, I'm the one who sent you, which is cool, that's good for them, it's good for us, because then they want to sponsor us more. In general, it's fun for everyone. You get yourself a new RPG to play that also plays itself while you're away and grinds, which is awesome. And you get to also experience Witcher 3. So it's this weird fusion of elements that are all generally good. Thanks, friends. And also, while you're doing all that other stuff, will you do me one last favor? Remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Truly be an idiot. I'll fight with it tomorrow. Okay. Alright, I'm calling that a night. Thank you guys for stepping in. Always appreciate the thumbs up. And you guys enjoy the rest of your night. See you tomorrow.